Welcome to Beef Snake Nerdcast. I'm Bolter. Now, Warhammer 40k is known for a lot of things. Control to the point of near satire, oppressive practices that stifle all creativity, and obsessive madness that will swallow everything we cherish. And I haven't even started talking about the setting yet. But, of course, 40k would not be itself without the recognizable Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes. And while it could easily be mistaken that these guys are the heroes of the setting, especially to newcomers, let's quickly dismiss that notion by talking about one of the more morally flawed chapters. After all, what kind of upstanding hero would give themselves the name Flesh Terrors?
That are alive and coming with me.
ZX Spider-Man Commodore 128 and 64. I hit the floor, I hit the shore. Got game skills from days of yore.
Da 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 da. The Flesh Terrors are one of the more unfortunate Space Marine chapters from the Second Founding, being one of the successor chapters to the noble Blood Angels Legion. This, of course, makes their Primarch Sanguinius. More on that later. Now, a quick note as to why that's important. Space Marines are not perfect beings. They may be asexual, 8-foot-tall, genetically enhanced super soldiers based on basically demigods, but they are in fact flawed to a genetic level. We don't really know why, but it affects each legion, and subsequently each chapter, and successor chapter, differently. For the Blood Angels, this was avoided for quite a long time, at least seemingly so. Being dashingly handsome, cultured, artistic, on top of being brilliant tacticians and warriors. Until they weren't. See, one day, back during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor was still around colonizing and conquering the galaxy, Angel Boy Sanguinius was fighting with his legion, and some of them just lost it. They tore apart their enemies with their bare hands and started drinking the blood. Wow! This was the first recorded incident of the Blood Angels' flaw, the Red Thirst. At least that's what it became known. Understandably, not good for business, so Sanguinius did his best to try to keep it quiet and under wraps. And then he died. Whoops. But wait, there's more. When Sanguinius died, due to some weird psychic demigod shit, the Blood Angels went even further over the edge, and now will lose their minds and exist in Sanguinius' last moments in a living nightmare, killing everything around them in a typhoon of rage, sorrow, and violence. This is the second genetic flaw of the Blood Angels, the Black Rage. After the Horus Heresy, and when Rabute Guilliman wrote the Codex Astartes and essentially broke up all the Space Marine bands, the Blood Angels, some of the Blood Angels anyway, thought, hey man, remember all that art and culture and diplomacy our bird dad taught us? Yeah, fuck that. And turned their chapter into vicious, butchering killers. They call themselves the Flesh Terrors. The Imperium man was, naturally, not thrilled about this, having one of the successors to one of the kindest, most diligent legions in the Great Crusade become a group of remorseless berserkers? That's awful. In fact, these guys have been hounded by the Space FBI, the Inquisition, a lot for the amount of wholesale slaughter they produce. But even then, they always are found loyal. They are good guys. They just slaughter their enemies in the name of the Emperor. And then an entire Imperial Guard regiment, and then the entire civilian population of the planet they just landed in, down to the last child. Yikes. These guys don't even have a concept of the context of chill. Hell, most allied forces in the Imperium, including the Imperial Guard, Sisters of Battle, and other Space Marine chapters, when they request aid or backup, will turn down responses from the Flesh Terrors, unless they're really up a creek. Mostly because there's no way of telling if the Flesh Tearers will actually stand down once the battle is over, or if they'll be like, cool, more please, and turn their weapons on their allies and hack them to bits. Here's something that's kind of impressive about the Flesh Tearers, though. While they are fully loyal to the Imperium, they don't really apologize for these horrible acts that the Red Thirst and the Black Rage drive them to, claiming that brutal close combat methods they employ in the name of battle are what they're created for. They are so unapologetic about it that it really puts people off. There is a big difference, though, between the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, which have very unfortunate side effects from one to the other. See, the Red Thirst is bad enough. It basically just turns you into a bloodthirsty killer that wants to basically throw aside all range combat to get in there, hack things to bits, get covered in gore, and potentially drink that gore afterwards. But the Black Rage is a death sentence. You are gone if you succumb, lost forever in a world of madness and blood, screaming the name of the arch-traitor for the rest of your days. Because that's all you can see. The last visions of Sanguinius, your gene-father, being killed by the arch-traitor, one of his best friends. His end is now yours. While other chapters, the successor chapters, have resisted this as much as they can, the Flesh Tearers actually kind of accept it. In fact, they treat it as a strength. This attitude can be reflected in their current numbers. The chapters of the Space Marines after the Horus Heresy had a maximum limit of 1,000 battle brothers. The Flesh Tearers have less than half of that, at approximately 400, give or take. Now, granted, that is still 400 murder-happy Astartes who want nothing more than to crack open an old one with the boys. But they're still not at full strength for a chapter, and their numbers are being bled slowly. Kind of ironic, actually. So, how are these guys an effective fighting force if they have so few? Tactics. Each of the 4 companies, consider that most Space Marine chapters have 10 companies, are trained to operate autonomously with limited input from any higher up. They are also trained fully in any specialized role as needed. So, a close quarters assault marine, for example, can drop his jump pack, grab a heavy bolter, no jokes please, and provide covering fire to his buddies. That was just an example, though. The focus of these guys as a chapter is brutal close combat fighting, prone to direct engagements and straightforward tactics as much as possible. This seems to be what they prefer, like the Blood Angels before them, very similar. This actually works well with the amount of death companies they have in their ranks. But Bolter, what's a death company? I hear you ask. Hold on, I'm getting to that. So when a Flesh Tearer Space Marine succumbs to the Black Rage, he is a risk to himself, not a big deal, only in death does duty end, but also to his fellow battle brothers. That part is the problem. So what they do is they take these poor, murderous but useful bastards, and they round them all up and put them into stasis. Then they deploy them together as a specialized company, usually led by a chaplain. More on them later. Flesh Tear death companies tend to be a bit bigger than the other successors of the Blood Angels, including the Angels themselves, which is a very bad sign. As mentioned before, these guys prefer straightforward, on-foot charges, as opposed to tanks or other vehicles. They want maximum individual mobility to close distance and get the butchery started as fast as they can. Except for one thing, when they bring a large amount of dreadnoughts. Normally, a Space Marine dreadnought is when you take a near-death Space Marine, usually a well-respected or old warrior of the chapter, and hook him up to life support, which is also hooked up to a devastatingly brutal mini-mecha able to gun down squads of enemies at once. Reminder that older Flesh Tearers tend to have the Black Rage, so they take this devastatingly brutal mini-mecha able to gun down entire squads of enemies, and stick an axe murderer into it. Have I made it obvious how few fucks these guys give yet? While these guys are slowly having their limited numbers chipped away by the brutal tide of violence and war in their galaxy, it is their determination in the face of extinction that keeps them fighting for the Imperium of Man. Remember, dying for the Emperor is a glorious and noble end in the eyes of everyone in the Imperium, and the Flesh Tearers are slowly and surely getting there. Most figure that, if they're near the end of the road, they'd rather drive than walk. They seem to want to leave a bold, loud, bloody legacy of honor for themselves, Sanguinius, and the Emperor, never to be forgotten. However, they may not be out of the ring just yet. With recent changes and events in the Imperium of Man, as well as the return of one of the Primarchs, and reinforcements from the newly minted Primaris Marines, read as newer, shinier poster boys for the setting, the Flesh Tearers may not be out of the game yet. Only time will tell as the grimdark universe gets grimmer and darker. Maybe they are rising out of the black, or maybe the fall will be that much further and more devastating. Thank you for tuning into Beef Snake Nerdcast. I've been Bolter, and you can find me and my antics on the socials. Join me next time when I flip over to the topic of Warhammer 40k! Damn it, RNG.